This is Chris with Dive Zone Scuba for another technical diving tips, techniques, and trips video. Hello divers, this is Chris with Dive Zone Scuba. Thanks for joining me for another video today. Today we're going to be talking about how to prevent your DSMB from doing this. So if you've been diving for a bit, you may have seen that happen. I've seen that actually happen both on the dock and underwater. So we're going to talk about what you could do today to prevent that from happening to you. The very first thing that you need to do if your DSMB comes so equipped is to cut off any kind of Velcro closure that is on the DSMB as it comes from the factory. This is one of the major causes of DSMBs becoming deployed by themselves, is the Velcro comes loose or otherwise fails and there is no other means of restraining it, and then the person starts peacocking on the dock or underwater. So the very first thing you want to do is to slice off the Velcro, and some DSMBs actually also come with a piece of bungee already attached. So you might as well just cut that off too. So this is the same DSMB here as this one. This one's obviously seen a little bit more use. And there is a saying, tried, true, and probably tired about 2 is 1, 1 is none. And so you can do a much better job yourself if you get some bungee and you put that on yourself and get rid of the Velcro and the bungee that comes from the factory. So here, what I've actually done is I've used the same loop here, and I've taken one large piece of bungee, passed it through, and tied knots on both sides. So I have 2 pieces of bungee restraining my DSMB from coming deployed by itself, and this has proven to be very reliable. Okay, so first thing you can do is cut off any kind of factory installed Velcro and also bungee, and replace it with a much better system. Here's one that I think that there are several companies now making one where they're kind of a one-piece type thing where there is a finger spool attached and then there is some kind of way of keeping this shut. And this is okay. The only issue with this is it does tend to be kind of bulky. So one of the ways people deploy these is, or secure them, is that they take this D-ring and they put a double ender on there, and then they snap it to a D-ring. But this can also become lost. That's what usually happens. Rather than becoming undone, it becomes lost. Alright, so the first big decision that you need to make for yourself when you're using a conventional DSMB, not one like this, is whether or not you're going to attach the reel or the finger spool to the DSMB. So obviously, if you have it pre-assembled, what's going to happen is it's going to be a little bit more bulky, a little bit more cumbersome, but it's going to be very much easier to deploy, because you're not going to have to attach the finger spool or the reel to the DSMB. If you do have a very large DSMB like these 2 here, then if you add on a large finger spool, then it becomes very bulky, and then there's a limitation to where you can stow things. So one question is, do you attach the finger spool or reel to the DSMB? And then the second one is how big is your DSMB, which will again limit you to where you might be able to store the DSMB. So those are a couple of questions that you need to resolve before you decide where you think is possibly the best place or best way to secure your DSMB to you. Let's talk about some of the more common ways that you see divers securing their DSMBs to their diving rigs. Alright, so we have kind of a standard setup here with the finger spool attached to the DSMB. It's pre-attached, pre-assembled. And so what you'll see is you'll see a lot of people that what they'll do is they'll take their crotch strap, and there's a D-ring on the crotch strap by the plate, and they'll take the DSMB and they'll hang it off of that. And so that's good because it's out of the way. The only problem is that if something happens to the DSMB, particularly like if they don't have, or if they're using a Velcro strap and it becomes undone, they're not going to be able to see their DSMB self-deploying. Another issue is in the event that you used a double ender to secure this. Okay, it's possible that the angle for the double ender would cause it to come off, and then you would also lose your finger spool. That would start to get deployed, and you would not know that that was occurring either if you had all that on the D-ring. Okay, so this is one thing that some divers do. To prevent losing it, what you'll see divers do is put it on a D-ring, and so now it's much more readily visible in the event that either the finger spool or the DSMB gets deployed accidentally, but this is kind of cumbersome and it does get in the way. A third way that you see people carrying it is on a D-ring, primarily on the right hip, because that's where people usually or often carry their reels. And you could put the DSMB and the finger spool on that side, and that usually stays out of the way. But again, to a little bit lesser extent, if it does self-deploy, either the finger spool or the DSMB, then you're not going to be able to know that. Okay, so these are some common ways that divers will do this. If you had the Mares type rig that was all put together, you could do the same thing. Put them on the D-rings, any one of these D-rings, and in this case, you'd have low probability of it. The finger spool deploying. The DSMB might deploy, but you could also just lose everything altogether. Okay, so that's another possibility that could happen with one of these types of DSMBs. For many divers, the preferred location for securing the DSMB and the finger spool is actually in a pocket on the wetsuit. So some wetsuits have built-in pockets, some are made to attach pockets to them, and then lastly, there are pockets that you can actually buy and glue on to your wetsuits. So these come in a variety of different sizes. These pockets, for example, are not particularly large, but they're certainly large enough to have a DSMB and a finger spool. This one, on the other hand, is looks a little bit larger than the one on the wetsuit. Maybe it's because it's more three-dimensional. And this one is actually holding a finger spool and a double ender and a large DSMB. Another alternative to the wetsuit with the pockets or the wetsuit with the glued-on pockets are a pair of shorts. So in this case, we have a pair of Mares shorts, and they have a gigantic pocket on the side here that you can carry quite a bit of things in. The advantage of the pocket shorts are, of course, that if you have several different wetsuits, you can move your shorts between the different wetsuits that you have. If you don't want to use pockets, you can always use pouches. Pouches, however, are a non-DIR approach, and in fact, the first technical diving course that I took as a student at the student level, my instructor made me remove my utility pouch that had different things in it. So here's an example of a utility pouch that you could use to have your DSMB in. You can actually see it through the window here. And in this case, what you can do with the pouch is you can actually take the pouch with double enders and you can hook them up to a wide crotch strap in this case. Okay, so this keeps things out of the way so that they do not interfere with anything. And also, there is no way that anything like the DSMB can unroll or the finger spool can become detached and get lost. Okay, so this is certainly one approach. Something else that you could also do is just get a regular utility pouch. And I actually made a video a while back on the use of utility pouches and that turns out it's one of the most popular videos on the channel. And so you can use the utility pouch. So if you're interested in that, this approach, I encourage you to see that video. So in this case, what happens is the utility pouch goes onto the waist belt, and then this goes into the buckle. And these are actually large enough to carry a DSMB and a finger spool. Okay, so utility pouches are certainly another way of carrying your DSMB and making sure that it's not going to unravel or lose your finger spool. They are, though, again, a non-DIR approach that you may encounter some people that have a problem with that. The last way that we're going to be discussing possibly carrying your DSMB involves the use of a back padding piece here that many different manufacturers make. And so in this deployment, this method is going to be a separate type situation where you're going to have a separate reel or finger spool, and what you're going to do is you're going to roll up or fold up the DSMB behind the padding of the backplate. So to deploy this, okay, what you're going to be doing is just pulling it out from the bottom, okay, and it will extract, and then you can put your finger spool or your reel on this, and then you can deploy it at that point. This is a very good approach for a larger DSMB because it stows compactly out of the way, and you do not have to worry about having a pocket or a pouch large enough for a DSMB of this size. So those are a few ways that you can better secure your DSMB and prevent it from peacocking. This is Chris with Dive Zone Scuba. I hope this video was helpful, and thanks for watching. And as always, please subscribe.